of how to live as a Roman and how to die as a Roman.
A pretty horrifying experience.
Ancient Rome is renowned as one of history's most iconic civilizations, yet its past is filled with strange customs that would shock the modern world. Come along as we uncover 20 peculiar and revolting practices that were once considered normal in ancient Rome. Number 20. Feeding the dead. It's uncertain what archaeologists were searching for in ancient Roman graves when they discovered that these people provided food for their dead in the afterlife. Grave sites often contained food, especially meat from animals. According to legislators, a grave wasn't considered complete without an animal offering to the goddess Ceres. Some believed the animal had to be a pig, so archaeologists expected to find pig remains during excavations. However, they were surprised to find remains of various animals, including a fox, an animal most wouldn't dare to eat. Reflecting on the words of the Roman poet Ovid, who said, "Good Ceres is content with little, if that little be but pure." It's hard to grasp what pure meant to the goddess Ceres. How can a fox and pure be associated in the same context? Let's not delve into the goddess's mind, but focus on our main topic. Feeding the dead was a Roman tradition. They even poured honey, wine, and food into the graves through a pipe. This was done to appease those they hoped had forgiven them in the afterlife and to provide for their loved ones in the years to come. If you think this ancient practice is bizarre, you haven't heard about the next one. Number 19. They drank gladiators' sweat. I know you probably wouldn't hug your sweaty friend because you don't want their sweat on your skin. Well, be grateful you weren't born in Rome about 1,000 years ago. Just as die-hard fans today might pay a fortune for a strand of their favorite celebrity's hair, ancient Romans idolized the sweat of famous gladiators. The dirt and sweat collected from the skin of these celebrated fighters were gathered and put into vials, which were then sold outside arenas. Wealthy women were typically the ones buying these vials. Gladiators, mostly men and slaves who fought for entertainment, varied in skill, but some achieved great success. Ancient Romans believed that the sweat of successful gladiators was a powerful aphrodisiac. After each fight, before the gladiators cleaned themselves, a tool called a strigil was used to scrape off their sweat. The more successful the gladiator, the more potent their fluids were thought to be as an aphrodisiac. Women would buy vials of this sweat and use it as a facial cream to enhance their complexion. Often, the grime and sweat were mixed with olive oil to improve consistency and incorporated into cosmetics. If the potency of gladiator sweat was proven, would you consider trying it? Number 18. Anyone who broke his vow could be killed. What do you know about vigilantism? Whatever it is, just know it was tougher for the ancient Romans. Every man was expected to keep his oaths and vows, and failing to do so was considered sacrilege. If a man broke his vows, he would be deemed an outcast. The rules of the ancient Roman vigilante groups included declaring a man homo sacer, meaning an outcast, if he was ever found breaking his vows. The first consequence for anyone found guilty was losing all legal rights, including property ownership. After that, he would be vulnerable to being killed by anyone without the murderer being held accountable. In case you missed it, a man accused of cheating his client would be declared homo sacer, and at any time, someone with a grudge or jealousy could use that opportunity to kill him. Imagine living in a place you call home and having to watch your back 24/7. In short, anyone declared homo sacer was a walking corpse. Number 17. They had regular vomiting sessions. What makes a person vomit? Maybe they're sick or something irritated them. It also happens when one is too full from eating or drinking. But for the ancient Romans, it happened all the time. They would vomit regularly just to empty their stomachs. The Roman philosopher Seneca famously said that the Romans weren't shy about vomiting. They vomit so that they may eat, and eat so that they may vomit. That might be the weirdest thing you hear today. Wealthy Romans in silk garments would eat while half lying around a lavishly set table, only to throw up afterward and continue eating, just to throw up some more. How is that even possible? The ancient Romans ate as if it was their life's purpose. Their extravagant feasts often lasted for several days, during which they consumed enormous amounts of food. Naturally, their eating marathons required a simple technique: vomiting. When they were too full to eat or drink anymore, they would go to the toilet and make themselves sick. The most annoying part is that some Romans didn't even bother to leave the table. Instead, they vomited in pots or on the floor. The wealthy ones with servants would call on their vomit collectors to crawl under the table and clean up the mess. You'd agree that this is a very weird practice that couldn't be normal today, but was considered normal in the past. Just imagining that alone, let's take a minute to puke. Number 16. They performed brain surgery without anesthesia. You might not be a medical expert, but you certainly understand what surgery entails. It involves using a surgical blade on the affected part of the body, opening it up to work inside, and then stitching it back together. You'd agree it sounds incredibly painful, even if you haven't experienced it. That's why doctors use anesthesia to keep patients from feeling pain during surgery. But guess what? The ancient Romans performed surgery and even brain surgery without anesthesia. First, let's acknowledge their impressive knowledge in performing brain surgery at a time when medicine was not as advanced. That's mind-blowing. However, the real accolades should go to their patients. How on earth did they endure such pain? Archaeologists discovered skulls with healed surgical marks, indicating that patients survived these operations. They found a skull of a 20-year-old patient in northern Greece dating back to around 800 BC, showing that the patient survived at least 20 years after skull surgery. The surgical procedure didn't use a drill, but a special tool that sculpted inside the skull, cleaning debris and fixing cracks. Another skull from 200 BC belonged to a 50-year-old man who had brain surgery using the drilling method. This patient also showed minimal evidence of infection and survived at least 5 to 6 years. What scientists still don't understand is what was used instead of anesthesia, since enduring brain surgery without it would have been intolerable, if not impossible. Maybe there was a trick to it, but whatever they did, it shows remarkable intelligence and skill. Number 15. They threw unwanted kids in the garbage dump. Who could imagine discarding a baby simply because they weren't wanted? Today, it's considered an abominable act, and anyone committing such cruelty would certainly face jail time. However, in ancient Rome, abandoning unwanted babies in the garbage dump was a common practice. During that time, many children died shortly after birth due to complications or diseases. As a result, the Romans waited a while before naming a child to ensure their survival. Until a name was given, the child wasn't considered fully human, and the head of the family, known as the paterfamilias, determined the newborn's fate. In Roman society, the paterfamilias had absolute authority over the baby's life and could leave the infant to die without facing legal consequences. Romans often abandoned unwanted babies on the streets or disposed of them in the trash. Infanticide was accepted, and they saw nothing wrong with it. Even Romulus, the founder of Rome, and his twin brother Remus were abandoned by their mother as babies. Fortunately, a she-wolf saved them, nursing them until they were adopted by the shepherd Faustulus and his wife. In the 8th century, Romulus decreed that no child could be killed before their 3rd year unless they were deformed. Are you struggling to understand this? You're not alone, because how could a society view infanticide as normal? Number 14. Public toilet and sponges. Ancient Roman toilet systems are among the few things that can be compared to the modern world. Although they weren't identical to today's toilets, they featured pioneering sewage networks that are still replicated globally. Building on what the Etruscans had done before them, the Romans developed a sanitation system using covered drains to carry stormwater and sewage out of Rome. This system was eventually reproduced across the empire and was hailed by the contemporary historian Pliny the Elder as the most remarkable of all Roman achievements. This engineering marvel enabled the construction of public baths, toilets, and latrines throughout ancient Rome. However, what stands out as unusual is how they cleaned up after using the toilet. Without toilet paper, they used something else entirely, a sea sponge on a stick. Yes, you heard that correctly. Just imagine having to clean yourself with a sea sponge on a stick. Let's leave this peculiar practice behind and look forward to modern civilization. Number 13. Toothpaste was made from honey and crushed bones. If you're concerned about the hygiene of ancient Romans after everything you've learned today, you might want to reflect on your own habits, respectfully. One aspect they took very seriously was their hygiene, particularly their oral hygiene. They understood the importance of maintaining healthy teeth and fresh breath, leading them to develop intriguing methods for dental care. The Romans used frayed twigs, known as dental sticks or miswak, made from aromatic woods like cinnamon or olive. They chewed on one end of these twigs to create a brush-like texture that they used to clean their teeth. For toothpaste, they used various substances. A common paste was made from crushed bones and oyster shells mixed with water, serving as an abrasive to remove plaque. Others used a mixture of honey and powdered charcoal to polish their teeth. Interestingly, modern dentists also use charcoal powder for teeth whitening, showing it was a valuable discovery. However, the combination of honey, crushed bones, oyster shells, and charcoal is a bit hard to understand. Would you be willing to try it out? If you do and it works, be sure to let us know. Number 12. Murderers were kept in sacks with snakes, dogs, roosters, and monkeys. The most terrifying aspect of ancient Rome must be their methods of execution. Different crimes warranted different punishments, but all forms of execution in ancient Roman history were extremely brutal. If nothing else, it highlights that humans can occasionally be very cruel to each other. While no form of execution is pleasant, some were surely worse than others. For instance, criminals sentenced to death in ancient times might be strangled, which, while painful, was relatively straightforward. However, certain crimes attracted far more severe punishments. One popular method involved throwing people off the Tarpeian Rock, an 8-foot-high cliff used for traitors and murderers. The most severe punishment, however, was reserved for patricide, the murder of one's father. This method, known as poena culli, meaning penalty of the sack in Latin, was particularly horrific. It involved placing the convicted murderer in a sack with several live animals, typically a rooster, a dog, and a monkey, and then throwing the sack into the water. Inevitably, the convict would die, as the animals, in such a confined and desperate situation, would not remain passive. This brutal method of serving justice is shocking, and one might wonder how witnesses of such executions did not suffer trauma. Do you think this was a justified punishment considering the offense? Number 11. Gladiators' blood as medicine. Just when you thought you'd seen everything, the ancient Romans continue to surprise with practices that seem almost otherworldly. Their ancient medical practices were steeped in rituals of sacrifice and appeals to the divine. They viewed disease as a punishment from the supernatural and believed that good health was bestowed as a divine gift, a stark contrast to modern perspectives which focus more on the scientific understanding of disease. Even their remedies for what they considered spiritual ailments were repulsive. They turned to consuming the blood or liver of gladiators as a cure for epilepsy, a practice that is revolting to us today. The ancient Romans held gladiators in high esteem, almost deifying them, attributing to them supernatural healing abilities. After a gladiator was killed, instead of burying them immediately, their liver and blood were harvested for medicinal purposes. One can only shudder to think how these medicines were administered and hope they were not ingested orally. Truly disgusting. Number 10. Urine was used for laundry. While today we typically dispose of urine by flushing it away, the ancient Romans had a different approach. Rather than recoiling from their own urine and promptly washing their hands after using the toilet, As we do now, they integrated human and animal urine into various aspects of daily life. For instance, it was customary in the Roman Empire to utilize human and animal urine as a form of mouthwash. Though it may sound repulsive to us, in ancient times, people observed that urine contributed to dental health, even aiding in teeth whitening. This is because urine contains ammonia, a byproduct of bacteria breaking down urea. Ammonia is utilized in numerous commercial cleaning and pharmaceutical products. Moreover, ancient Romans employed urine in laundering practices, ensuring that it aged before application, as older urine was deemed more effective. But the use of urine didn't stop there. It was also utilized in leather dyeing and served as a fertilizer. While modern chemical fertilizers may contain similar substances to those found in human urine, the utilization of urine in laundry is something we no longer consider conventional. After all, who stores urine nowadays? Number 9. Brains for dinner. When delving into the peculiar customs of the ancient Romans, their culinary practices cannot go unmentioned. Despite their access to a plethora of food options, one particular delicacy stands out: brains. Now, before you recoil, rest assured it's not human brains, though that doesn't necessarily make it any less unconventional or messy. Instead of opting for just any animal's brain, the Romans favored the tender, pure brains of lambs. This choice was considered a special treat during mealtimes, and they prepared it in various ways. Sometimes they boiled or baked it, experimenting with different recipes. One particularly intriguing dish involved lamb brains combined with eggs, pepper, and even rose petals. This demonstrates how consuming lamb brains was deemed commonplace in ancient times. But would you be inclined to partake in a plate of brains for dinner? Allow me to answer on your behalf. No, thank you. We'll decline. Number 8. Dining on exotic animals. Before we bid farewell to the topic of the Roman diet, let's explore another peculiar aspect of ancient Roman culinary habits. While today's butcher shops typically offer beef, pork, or chicken, with perhaps a few variations like turkey or lamb in supermarkets, the ancient Romans had a much more diverse array of meats on their menus. Their gastronomic preferences extended to include snails, guinea fowl, geese, ducks, hares, rabbits, pheasants, wild boar, venison, and partridges. Additionally, they valued various animal parts that might seem unconventional by today's standards, such as chicken livers, pork cheeks, calf tongue, flamingo tongues, stuffed dormice, roasted parrots, and even moray eel. These choices may strike us as exotic, suggesting that the Romans were keen on experiencing a wide range of culinary delights. In fact, ancient Roman cookbooks contain recipes for sauces featuring crane, turtle dove, flamingo, and a variety of other exotic birds. Yes, even parrots. It's certainly a curious aspect of their dining culture. Number 7. Garum, fermented fish sauce. We may be moving on from discussing ancient Roman cuisine, but there's one culinary curiosity that demands attention: garum, the fermented fish sauce. Garum, a term encompassing various types of fish sauces widely enjoyed in ancient Rome, can be likened to the ketchup of its time. Traditionally, garum was crafted using small fish such as sardines and mackerel, combined with brine and abundant thyme. While garum may not seem inherently bizarre, its preparation method earns it a place on our list. The fish used must be impeccably fresh, with salt added to comprise at least 20 to 25% of the final liquid. Daily stirring of the fish, typically 3 to 4 times a day, is essential to ensure proper soaking in the liquid. The fermentation process then takes approximately 2 to 3 months in a container exposed to sunlight. One might question the necessity of starting with fresh fish only to ferment it for several months afterward. Number 6. They used perfumed oil to bathe instead of soap. Returning to the topic of ancient Roman hygiene, their dedication to cleanliness is well known. However, with soap unavailable, how did they maintain their bathing rituals? The Romans frequented public bathhouses almost daily, using this as both a social activity and a means to cleanse themselves of the day's accumulation of dirt and grime. For those unable to visit the bathhouse, an alternative method involved applying essential oils and olive oil to their skin, then using a tool called a strigil to scrape off the mixture. Since soap was absent during the Roman Empire, olive oil served as a substitute, effectively removing impurities from the skin when scraped away with the strigil. This practice left their skin feeling smooth and moisturized, with the added benefit of the scented olive oil leaving a pleasant fragrance behind. But indeed, what is a bath without soap? Number 5. Animal dung was used as medicine. In the realm of wound care, the ancient Romans diverged from modern practices by eschewing gauze and bandages in favor of animal dung. Embracing a belief in the healing properties of animal feces, they utilized it as a remedy for various ailments. Remarkably, this practice transcended social classes, with individuals from the middle, upper, and lower echelons of society all partaking in dung collection. After gathering, the dung was left to dry in the sun to preserve its beneficial qualities, and once desiccated, it was stored for future medical use. Additionally, animal dung served a dual purpose as a source of energy. The Romans would cook it and incorporate it into beverages as a means of boosting vitality. Despite its purported energy-boosting properties, the mere thought of consuming animal dung is universally unappealing. Number 4. Public executions were entertainment. In ancient Rome, the elite class prioritized maintaining public order, devising various brutal punishments for crimes deserving of the death penalty. As a result, public executions were not solemn affairs, but rather spectacles enjoyed by the masses, alongside other forms of entertainment at venues like the Colosseum. For over 4 centuries, the Colosseum hosted a consistent lineup of games and shows, with public executions being a prominent feature. These events typically occurred during lunchtime, allowing spectators to witness the consequences of serious crimes while also enjoying other spectacles such as gladiator fights. Number 3. Olive oil, honey, and wool were used as contraceptives. Contraception has a long history, and ancient Romans had some rather unconventional methods. In Roman society, the responsibility for contraception fell upon women rather than men. One method involved breastfeeding for 2 to 3 years, which was believed to have a natural contraceptive effect. A peculiar method involved using a hairy spider with 2 small worms inside its head. These worms, when tied onto women with deer hide, were thought to prevent conception for a year. Another approach was washing with a vinegar douche after intercourse, particularly common in brothels where pregnancy was undesirable for business reasons. Barrier methods included applying spermicides like elephant dung, rancid olive oil mixed with honey, myrtle oil, and white lead. Additionally, some women blocked the entrance of the uterus with fine spun wool. While these methods may seem unusual, it's unclear how effective they were in practice. Number 2. Toga whitening with sulfur fumes. In ancient Rome, the toga was a common outer garment worn by people, typically in white. Keeping these togas clean was essential, but the method used may surprise you. Throughout the streets of ancient Rome, pots were strategically placed for men to relieve themselves. However, this wasn't about hygiene as one might assume. Instead, these pots served a purpose for the phallic, which were commercial Roman laundries. Periodically, workers would collect the contents of these pots to clean classic togas and newly woven wool, removing their oily lanolin content. But that's not the end of the process. Urine, which contains ammonia, was utilized for its alkaline properties in cleaning. Alkaline solutions are effective at breaking down fats into soluble components, making them useful for removing greasy stains. Clothing was submerged in tubs of well-aged urine, where barefooted workers would tread upon them to assist in the cleaning process. Afterwards, the clothing was rinsed in clean water and sometimes subjected to sulfur fumes produced by burning sulfur. This sulfur dioxide acted as an additional bleaching agent. Number 1. They used fallacies as lucky charms. This isn't just the final entry on our list, but it's also the most intriguing one. Have you heard of a phallus? It's a sculpted representation of an erect male reproductive organ, often used in various forms such as jewelry, rings, and sculptures to symbolize dominance or male potency. Ancient Roman art often depicted sexuality prominently, to the extent that it was considered inappropriate by 19th century audiences, leading to the bricking up of doorways in 1849. The phallus held significant importance in ancient Roman culture. It served as a talisman for good luck and protection against evil. Romans commonly wore phallus-shaped jewelry as lucky charms, and women adorned their hairpins with intricately decorated phalluses as well. Phallus symbols were also incorporated into pottery and wind chimes. These chimes were strategically hung around households to ring in the wind and dispel negative energies, thus preserving positivity and keeping evil forces at bay. Here concludes our exploration of 20 peculiar and repulsive practices from ancient Rome that were once deemed ordinary. Which of these struck you as the most peculiar? Let us know in the comments section. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.